Hi, my name is Gray, and I think that eating people is okay. I tried filming this a week ago, and I was sitting outside in a wedding dress, and it was super freezing cold, and I think that wearing the wedding dress and trying to, be aesthetic, look cool, made me put on a character, and I want to try and just, refilm it, just kind of talking as myself. But I'm autistic and I'm kind of always masking. I don't really know how to stop yet. I'm working on it. So I'm just gonna talk and see what happens. Cannibalism is definitions. Cannibalism is not killing people. Cannibalism is just eating them, and I feel like I should have started there. So cannibalism is only eating someone of the same species or something of the same species, and this will come up if you just look up the definition, but it was cleared up in Bill Schutz's A Natural History of Cannibalism. There's a little part where he's like, some scientists have tried to say that it includes killing too, but that would need to have an entirely different definition. So cannibalism is just eating the same species. And so what I'm talking about here is consensual cannibalism. So if someone dies and says, yes, please eat my body, I think it should be allowed. So yeah, let's get to it. So in senior year, I watched Hannibal, and instead of getting a hyperfixation on Hannibal, the show or the characters, I got a hyperfixation on cannibalism itself. And when I am interested in something, I talk to everyone about it, and I am not the best with social cues and stuff like that. And so I was just talking to everyone who would give me the time of day, everyone who would listen about cannibalism. And this wasn't it wasn't like cannibalism as a metaphor for love or lust, and it wasn't a morbid fascination. It was just cannibalism. Uh, and I thought that when I wanted to talk to people about this, they would be like, oh yeah, it's so cool that a guy ate his own foot and had a party and served it as tacos to everyone. But no, they were all like, ew, that's really weird. Why are you talking about that? I got a lot of responses that were everyone was kind of freaked out, and a lot of people would go so far as to say that it was immoral or a genuinely bad thing to think about or talk about, and that I was they thought I was trying to do it for shock value or to be edgy or something. I was like, no, I just think it's cool. I just think eating people is real neat, you know? So because I was talking to everyone in my high school about cannibalism and asking people, would you eat someone? Would you want to try human meat? Then people didn't like it, and so I wanted to be able to ask them why. Why is that? And kind of have a decent argument to give, sort of. And so this is going to be that to an extent. And so I thought about how I wanted to do this, and I could argue it. If I put in a lot of time and effort, I could argue this in a way that people who are really inclined to dislike things that are different from them would agree with me. Not really, but I could argue to people who are really against it. But instead, I think it's going to be a lot easier and more fun for me if I just kind of talk to despite the lack of definition of this word, leftists, because I'm going to be talking about a lot of this was caused by bigotry and stuff. A lot of people are just gonna discredit me immediately, but that's fine, you know? I just decided that I'm not gonna put in the effort to try and talk to them. So my main argument about cannibalism is that humans are just another kind of meat, essentially. So if you're vegetarian, you're not gonna, I don't expect you to want to eat people, but I think that it's an issue of bodily autonomy, that like when we die, there are a couple of options that you're allowed to do. And those include burial, cremation, free burial, like just putting people in the ground without a casket in like Colorado only. There's probably more places, but like Colorado, and a couple of places you can turn people to goo. I don't know what it's called. My cat's on my lap and you can't see it, so it's gonna look like I'm just like reaching down here. So yeah, those are the options, but all of those things cost money. And a lot of people that I've brought this up to are like, just get cremated, just get cremated. Don't worry about having a funeral, don't worry about all of that. Cremation is $1,000 like average, and that's a lot of money for just having like disposing of a body. And like not just disposing, but you know what I mean, like to get for the cheapest option when you die to be $1,000 to just deal with someone dying is crazy. That's crazy to me. And so yeah, so I think that when you die, you should be able to decide what happens with your body. And I think one of those options should be, yeah, my family gets to take me home and eat me. Or my friends get to like have a party and eat me. And because that's what I want to do, but I'm not legally allowed to do that. So another thing is that cannibalism itself, except for in one state, I can't remember which one, but cannibalism itself is not illegal. You can legally, if you find a way to obtain the meat legally, you can eat people, which is cool. I'm happy about that. But the thing is that obtaining the meat legally, you can't do it because of corpse desecration laws. And basically, what those are, I'm really bad at reading laws and stuff, but basically, all that corpse desecration laws are in most places, I'll like put something on the screen, uh, is don't do things that aren't standard practice. And the problem with this is that that means that's essentially writing into law, follow the norm, which historically hasn't been a good idea. Writing into law, just do what's standard practice, is dangerous, in my opinion, because without a qualification as to why standard practice is the way that it is, that means that it can just kind of be anything. Like, and I know that the way I'm saying this is really bad. I really should have written this out in some way. But so you're limiting it to whatever doctors normally do is okay, which puts a lot of power with doctors, which I'm not saying is bad, nothing wrong with doctors, but it gives that power to someone. I'm doing really bad at this. Writing into law, just do what's normal. It's like saying because I said so, you know? Like I think that's what I'm trying to get at, is that you can't just say do what's standard practice, because you have to lay out what standard practice is. And if standard practice means that you can't cut a piece of someone off and send it home with their family, like, I don't know. So for the only legal thing to do to be send them to, what is it, a mortuary or something, and have them embalmed, have like organs cut out and like all of this stuff, have them put in a box, bury it underground for maggots to eat. Like, I personally would rather my family eat me than maggots. And like, guys. So I'm trying to say two things here that I completely like forgot to say, and that is that I don't think that corpses should be an industry that we make money off of, and I see what we do to them already as corpse desecration. So that's the end of this section. Thank you. Bodily autonomy. Point 1. Point 2. It's built on the same foundation as like every other bigotry, And this always sounds kind of dismissive when I say it, but like, okay, I'm trans, and I put a poll on tumblr.com, and it was like, are you okay with the idea of cannibalism consensually, uh, and are you trans? And the results ended up being like a perfect curve. So like the more trans the more trans you were, the more okay you were with cannibalism. And this was not surprising to me, but a lot of people in the notes were like, ew, can someone explain this? And I feel like I maybe should have done a follow-up of some sort so that it didn't just contribute to transphobia, because I forget that people hate cannibalism, and also trans people. But my explanation why I think it makes perfect sense. A lot of people in the notes were saying like it's probably a body horror thing, like trans people are more likely to like body horror because of our relationships with our bodies and stuff. And I'm like, yeah, I guess that kind of makes sense, but I don't personally see cannibalism as horrific at all. I just kind of I see it as like kind of spiritual, if that makes sense, but just practical. Nice. My theory for why the results were the way that they are is that trans people are a lot more likely, so because we've lived our whole lives, or at least, you know, the parts of our lives that we've known that we are trans, having people just kind of hate us for no reason, I think that we're more likely to assess whether or not we are actually not okay with something when we're presented with it. So, we're a lot less inclined to just go, oh, that thing is gross because I said so, or like dismiss something without a good explanation for it, if that makes sense. And then we start to think about cannibalism as a concept, like start actually picking apart why we might dislike it, and we end up at people should do what they want to do, essentially, because our identities are dismissed just on the basis of, oh, it's against nature, it's gross, it's gonna be a social contagion, and like if we allow cannibalism, what's next? So yeah, I think that trans people, queer people, maybe even autistic people, I didn't do that poll, but I think it would have fit in there, are more inclined to think through what society has told us to think about things, you know? So you're generally hearing cannibalism is gross, cannibalism is a horror thing, it's scary and yucky. And instead of just taking that at face value and being like, oh yeah, okay, I don't want people to like think I'm weird, so I'll just go with it, we go, do I actually think it's gross and yucky? And we go, no, actually. My next point, racism. Historically, cannibalism is not new, you know? It's like one of the oldest practices, especially spiritually and ritualistically and stuff. It's practiced a lot by people who are not white. And then white people go in and they go, oh, you're doing this thing that is savage. And they say, and we use the word savage, and then we say, oh, because you eat people, you are savage. You are evil, you know? Like, it's a really easy way to dismiss an entire people as crazy. And another thing is that, so I hear, when I ask people what's wrong with cannibalism, a lot of the time they are under the impression that eating people will make you go insane, and they use the word savage. And that is crazy to me, because, like, if you think about what you're actually saying, like, where do you think that connotation came from? Where do you think savage and cannibalism got connected? It was racism, probably. That's my theory, at least, because, like, you know, anything that the general American population thinks is bad, you can probably trace it back to racism. Like, you know. So, people thinking that eating meat traumatizes you and makes you go insane is generally a straight line to people who eat people are traumatized and insane, and then that just goes straight to racism. I think that was my whole point. I did that much more succinctly than I did last time. But yeah, eating people ritualistically is not bad. I think, personally, I think it's pretty cool. And then you go, but Gray, can't you go insane from eating people? Can't it make you sick? Aren't there special diseases you can get from eating people? Yes, there's one of them, and it's called Kuru. And so now I get to do my whole like reacting to a TikTok part of the video, which is not actually going to be a reaction because it's not actually playing. But I took notes last time I watched it about everything that made me upset about it, and so I'm just going to go down the list. So there was this TikTok that got sort of popular a little while ago. Like someone sent it to me and they were like, I know that you're into eating people. How do you feel about this? And so I watched it and I was like, oh, this is going to be interesting because I've never thought about the psychological effects before. Like I've never heard that there are any. And I was like, I'll hear her out. I'll listen because I've never researched this before. One of the first things she says is,
in this day and age, cannibalism is considered a mental illness and is also illegal.
and I don't know where she got that. It's not. It's like it's not considered a mental illness at all. People may associate it with mental illness, but it's not a mental illness. And so and then the whole video is kind of based around this thing that she very confidently says. And then she starts talking about Zuru.
There are records of people eating humans a long time ago to try to gain their strength or gain their power or intelligence or something like that. There are also different tribes where cannibalism is considered a ritual. The most common tribe is known as Four, and they had about 300 cases of this mystery disease every single year. Mystery disease is called Zuru,
which isn't what it's called. It's called Kuru. It's so the four people of Papua New Guinea had a problem where their women and children were going insane and then dying, and this is not good. And so like people found out and they were like, oh well, it's because you're eating people. And so they had like a tradition where when someone died, the women and children would put their brains in a bamboo shoot, I think, and then like slurp it out. And so the problem was not the eating of human meat, it was the eating of human brains, which were infected specifically with a prion called kuru. It's essentially just a protein that's like twisted up real weird, and when it comes in contact with your proteins, they twist up the same weird way, and then you go crazy. It was also called like the laughing death, I think. Maybe that might be a different thing, but the laughing disease. And I think she said in the video like 300 people a year would die of it, which is a lot, you know. So yeah, moral of the story, don't eat human brains, but the rest is fine. And the big twist here is that get it, is that mad cow disease is a prion. And that's why we don't eat cow brains, and you're not even supposed to eat the spinal tissue because it could be like infected with the brain somehow, and you could go insane from a prion. But it's only the brains, and it's not every cow. And you know, so it's just a food safety measure essentially. And so don't eat human brains, but that does not mean that eating humans is unsafe. It's exactly as safe as eating cow meat, which pretty much everyone does, you know? It's fine. It's good. It's healthy. It's protein. Like I hear a lot of the time like you can't digest the proteins, but I think that kind of just came from the idea of Kuru because a lot of people seem to know about it, weirdly enough. But it's just this like weird telephone game where like they don't actually know what it is. And then for the rest of the video she goes on to like treat cannibalism like something that like only really terrible mentally ill people would think about. And it's just it's just an interesting topic. So I don't like the way that she treated it.
Now, getting tribes, Kuru out of the way, what would cause a person to have cannibalistic tendencies if it was just like you or me, daily life? These mental illnesses just tend to be the most common when people have cannibalistic tendencies. So it doesn't mean that you're going to be a cannibal. It just means it's the most common in those type of people, even though cannibalism itself is very rare. So take what I'm saying with a grain of salt. This isn't common. Sometimes with different personality disorders where they are narcissistic and have a large ego, they'll desire to overcome deep-rooted frustrations by an extraordinary act, and sometimes they'll land on cannibalism. A lot of cannibals are psychotic, but there are some that aren't. Some know full well what they're doing and are actively choosing. People that kill for cannibalistic reasons usually have these elaborate fantasies. They find eating people very satisfying. They enjoy the process of taking the meat off of the bones. It makes them feel powerful and in control. Something cannibals typically enjoy is the feeling of not being alone, because cannibals tend to be pretty lonely people. I mean, and they'll always blame it on other people. They never look inward. Sometimes eating another person will give them the feeling that they're not alone, that they're with somebody else. It gives them the ultimate feeling of control.
And then at the very end, she says,
but what would happen if, say, you or I had to, like, eat a person? What would happen? Being forced to eat a human is highly traumatic, and it's a huge taboo. If you ever have to eat a human for survival, you will probably end up with trauma-related anxiety.
And that's just not how cannibalism works. Some people might just choose to do it, and I just don't like the way that she's thinking about this. And this seems to be a lot of people's like first introduction to thinking about cannibalism, and that makes me sad. So yeah, I think that's kind of everything that I wrote down. Usually when I have a lot of thoughts that kind of connect in my head and I'm like, oh, that could probably be an essay. It's already an essay and someone's already written it. So I was like, cannibalism, fear of the other, bodily autonomy, and fear of the other includes like racism, transphobia, homophobia. Just, it connects to me. I think that it's just saying something is against nature and not giving it a ton of explanation, and then just saying, well, because we said so, it's bad. And then everyone's scared of it. So yeah, I didn't actually directly research this video at all. All of my research is over a year old because I haven't been like actually super hyperfixated on this in a while. I just wanted to make a video because I'm bored and really burnt out, and I'm supposed to be studying for finals right now, but this is a lot more fun. I wanted to do like a deep dive at some point in the future, so I still might make like another video if anyone actually watches this. Maybe even if no one watches this, because then I don't know. That's my video. Oh, that was the other thing that I wanted to say. Haters, sound off in the comments, please. I really need to know if I argued this well at all, so that in case I do want to make a longer video, I know what I did wrong. So if you want me to shut up, if you think I'm stupid and said everything wrong and this makes no sense, tell me, please. I would really appreciate it, and be as mean as you want. Love you guys. Okay, bye. Can I get out my guitar? Gonna crack a rib when I get home. I'm gonna bury you in my favorite hole. I made a bloody mess in the kitchen sink. I tried to fix myself.